You will never step into your divine assignment while clinging to the approval of people who were never assigned to your destiny. Letting go is not weakness, it's wisdom. Many people stay stuck not because they lack talent, faith, or opportunity, but because they are unwilling to detach from relationships, habits, or environments that no longer support who they are becoming. There comes a point in your journey when growth demands separation. You cannot elevate while you're still holding hands with people who are comfortable crawling. Every time you attempt to rise while dragging someone who is resisting change, you create internal conflict. You begin to second guess yourself. You start to doubt the vision. You compromise your pace. You delay your assignment. And all of that because you're more loyal to familiar people than to your future self. That's not humility. It's bondage disguised as friendship or loyalty. It's important to recognize the difference between people who are part of your process and people who are part of your purpose. Just because someone was there in your struggle doesn't mean they're meant to be there in your success. Sometimes the people who stood with you in your wilderness are not equipped for your promised land. And if you're not discerning, you'll bring wilderness habits into a palace season and self-sabotage your elevation. Letting go doesn't mean you hate them. It doesn't mean you wish them harm. It simply means you have finally chosen to honor your calling above your comfort. You've chosen to protect your peace, your growth, your mindset, and your future. You cannot fly if you're tied down by the emotional obligations of trying to fix, rescue, or convince people who refuse to move. Sometimes you outgrow people, not because you're better than them, but because you're becoming better than you used to be. And the version of you that they're attached to no longer exists. You can't go back to being small just so they feel comfortable. You can't keep explaining your calling to people who have no intention of understanding your purpose. Growth is often lonely because very few are willing to do the deep, internal work that elevation requires. While others are scrolling, you're studying. While others are gossiping, you're grinding. While others are comfortable, you're called. And when you start making that shift, the distance is automatic. It's not personal, it's principle. You're aligning with something greater. Letting go also applies to your mindset. You can't step into a new level carrying old thoughts. The thoughts that got you here can't take you there. You must release the fear, the doubt, the guilt, the shame, the imposter syndrome. Because just like people, those mental patterns will anchor you to your past if you don't make a conscious decision to drop them. The emotional pull to stay connected can be strong. There will be guilt. There will be questions. There will be moments where you feel like you're being too harsh or too distant. But remind yourself, you are not abandoning people. You are obeying purpose. And purpose requires pruning. What is not pruned will rot. And what rots will infect what you're building. You must also understand that every time you say yes to someone who drains you, you are saying no to your future. Time, energy, and focus are finite resources. You don't owe anyone unlimited access to your life just because you have history together. Your destiny deserves priority. Your vision deserves protection. And your peace deserves preservation. When you finally let go, the weight lifts, the fog clears, the momentum returns. And you'll realize that the people you were afraid to lose were the very ones keeping you from winning. Growth is waiting. Freedom is waiting. But it's on the other side of release. Validation is one of the most deceptive traps on the journey to purpose. It feels good to be seen, acknowledged, celebrated, But when your identity is built on someone else's approval, your confidence will always be unstable. The truth is, no matter how powerful your calling is, if you keep waiting for someone to validate it, you may never fully step into it. Because people will withhold validation when it threatens their comfort, exposes their stagnation, or challenges their opinion of you. You were never meant to be defined by the applause of the crowd. Applause is seasonal. People will cheer for you when you reflect their preferences and then reject you when you grow beyond their expectations. If you keep chasing applause, you'll keep changing yourself. You'll shrink in rooms where you're meant to stand tall. You'll question your ideas, your voice, your decisions. Not because they're wrong, but because someone else hasn't affirmed them yet. When you live for validation, you become addicted to feedback. You can't move unless you're praised. You hesitate unless you're supported. You procrastinate unless you're encouraged. That is no way to build a life of purpose. Purpose requires action without applause. It requires movement without confirmation. It requires the kind of faith that says, even if nobody claps, I still know this is what I'm called to do. The most dangerous thing about needing validation is that it can cause you to silence your true self. You'll start performing instead of being. You'll say what's popular instead of what's right. You'll compromise your truth just to avoid criticism. But purpose was never about popularity. It was about obedience. And obedience doesn't always look impressive to people who lack vision. Some of the greatest breakthroughs come when you stop waiting for someone else to give you permission. You already have permission. You were created with purpose. You were assigned before you were approved. And the same people whose approval you're craving may not even have the spiritual capacity to understand what's inside of you. So why are you waiting on a green light from people who can't even see the road you're traveling? Validation also becomes a prison when you start tailoring your dreams to fit someone else's comfort zone. You'll play small so others don't feel insecure. You'll hide your brilliance to avoid jealousy. You'll pretend you're confused just to avoid intimidating those who never chose to grow. But you weren't created to fit. You were created to lead, to disrupt, to innovate, to inspire. And leadership requires the courage to be misunderstood. You can't be focused on destiny and obsessed with approval at the same time. One will always cancel the other. You either live by faith or by feedback. You either pursue your vision or pursue people's opinions. But you cannot serve both. There will be moments where no one gets it, where no one affirms it, where no one celebrates it. And in those moments, you must be grounded enough to keep moving anyway. When you stop needing validation, you start leading from a place of authenticity. You make decisions based on purpose, not popularity. You take risks not because they are safe, but because they are aligned. You show up boldly, speak clearly, act decisively, because you are not performing for applause, you are fulfilling an assignment. And that shift changes everything. Sometimes the silence of others is not rejection, it's redirection. Their lack of support is not a sign that you're wrong, it's often a sign that you're rising. Growth separates, elevation exposes. And when your progress begins to highlight their stagnation, don't be surprised when the validation dries up. That's when you know it's working. The real power is when you become unshakable in your identity with or without their approval. You no longer need to be seen to feel significant. You no longer need to be clapped for to keep going. You know who you are. You know what you carry. You know what you're called to do. And that knowing becomes your fuel. Emotional entanglement is one of the greatest hidden threats to your elevation. It doesn't announce itself loudly. It operates in the background, slowly draining your focus, blurring your vision, and softening your drive. You can have the most powerful goals, the most detailed plans, the most divine calling, but if you're emotionally entangled with the wrong people or situations, your energy will be diverted, your clarity will be compromised, and your progress will be delayed. When you're emotionally entangled, you're constantly negotiating your boundaries. You say yes when you mean no. You tolerate behavior that drains your spirit. You sacrifice your peace just to keep the connection. You stay silent to avoid conflict, even when something inside you is screaming for change. That constant emotional juggling creates instability, and instability is the enemy of destiny. You cannot walk in power while you're tied up in emotional confusion. These entanglements don't always look toxic on the surface. Sometimes they're packaged as loyalty, compassion, or obligation. But just because something looks noble doesn't mean it's purposeful. If you're constantly rescuing someone who refuses to grow, you're not helping them. You're enabling their stagnation. And worse, you're betraying your own progress. You can't keep carrying people who have no intention of walking beside you. Focus requires emotional discipline. It means protecting your heart, guarding your mind, and prioritizing your purpose. You must be willing to disconnect from relationships, conversations, and patterns that distract you from your assignment. Emotional clarity is the soil where vision grows. If your heart is cluttered, your steps will be unstable. If your mind is conflicted, your decisions will be compromised. And if your energy is scattered, your results will reflect it. We often underestimate how much mental, real estate, emotional entanglements occupy. They keep you up at night. They rob your creativity. They make you question your worth. They plant seeds of self-doubt, comparison, guilt, and fear. All of that energy could be used to build, to create, to serve, to lead, but instead it's being wasted on emotional loops that serve no higher purpose. Some of the most gifted people are stuck not because they lack skill, but because they're emotionally overcommitted. They've made everyone else a priority and put their vision on the back burner. They pour into others without being poured into. They try to fix people who don't want healing. They try to please people who will never be satisfied. And in doing so, they exhaust their own potential before it even has a chance to bloom. Focus demands that you detach from what drains you. It demands that you be honest about what's helping you grow versus what's holding you hostage. You have to be willing to make hard decisions, to walk away from conversations that go in circles, to stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you, and to stop showing up where you're merely tolerated but never valued. The truth is, you cannot afford to give your emotional energy to what God never assigned to you. Not every relationship is covenant. Not every connection is divine. Some people are lessons, not lifelines. Some seasons are meant to be closed, not carried into your future. The more you learn to release emotionally, the more you regain control mentally. And with mental clarity comes bold, decisive, focused action. Clarity is what separates movement from progress. You can be moving fast, but going nowhere if your heart is still tangled in unresolved emotions. You can be busy but unproductive because your attention is constantly being redirected by emotional triggers. You can be talented but ineffective because your energy is being drained by emotional drama. That's why detachment is not cruelty, it's necessity. You're not being cold, you're being clear. The moment you free yourself from emotional entanglement, your vision expands. You can hear God more clearly. You can sense direction more precisely. You begin to see the difference between what's urgent and what's important. And when you start living from that place of emotional clarity, your actions become sharper, your time becomes more valuable, and your life begins to align with the destiny that was already written for you. Growth is often misunderstood because it doesn't always look glamorous from the outside. People think of growth as building something big, achieving something massive, or reaching some public milestone. But true growth often begins in private, in the quiet decisions to protect your peace, guard your time, and create boundaries that align with your purpose. Growth requires space, emotional, spiritual, mental, and boundaries are what create and protect that space. When you begin to grow, you start noticing how much of your time has been spent managing other people's emotions. You start realizing how often you've said yes just to avoid conflict, how many hours you've lost in conversations that went nowhere, and how many moments you've sacrificed to accommodate people who were never invested in your development. Boundaries are how you reclaim those moments, those hours, that energy. People who don't understand growth will often label your boundaries as selfishness. They'll say you've changed, as if that's a bad thing. But change is evidence that you're alive. Growth is proof that you're not content with being stuck. And boundaries are the fences that keep distractions out while allowing your vision room to flourish. You can't cultivate greatness in a garden that's constantly being trampled by people who don't respect what you're building. There's a difference between being available and being accessible. Availability means you're open to connection. Accessibility means you have standards for who and what gets access. Growth teaches you that not everyone deserves access to your time, your mind, or your presence. Just because someone wants your energy doesn't mean they're entitled to it. You must be a good steward of your presence because it's valuable. Boundaries aren't walls meant to isolate. They are gates meant to regulate. You get to decide who enters your space and for what purpose. You get to decide what kind of conversations you entertain, what kind of energy you allow in your atmosphere, and what kind of relationships you maintain. Without boundaries, your life becomes a free for all where other people's priorities constantly override your own. As you grow, your boundaries will tighten, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. You no longer say yes out of guilt. You no longer explain your no. You no longer entertain what drains you, distracts you, or diminishes you. Your growth demands focus, and focus cannot survive in an environment where your peace is constantly being disturbed by unfiltered access. The stronger your boundaries, the stronger your focus becomes. Suddenly, you have more time to work on your vision, more energy to invest in your calling, more clarity to hear divine direction. Boundaries clear the clutter. They create margin. They restore balance. And from that place, creativity flows, productivity increases, and alignment deepens. Sometimes growth will require you to distance yourself from good people, not because they're bad, but because they're not aligned. Alignment isn't about who you like, it's about who supports your purpose. Some people are comfortable with the old version of you. They miss the you that was always available, always accommodating, always sacrificing your needs. But that version of you was overextended and underfulfilled. It's uncomfortable at first, especially if you're used to being everything for everyone. But the more you honor your own growth, the easier it becomes to uphold the boundaries that support it. You stop apologizing for needing time alone. You stop feeling guilty for saying no to last-minute requests. You begin to value rest, silence, reflection, and purpose-driven action over mindless activity and approval chasing. Eventually, you'll look around and realize that your peace has returned. Your clarity is sharper. Your energy is higher. Your life feels lighter, not because the world changed, but because your boundaries did. Growth requires boundaries, and boundaries require courage. But on the other side of that courage is the freedom to become everything you were created to be. Not everyone is meant to go where you're going, and the sooner you accept that truth, the smoother your journey becomes. One of the biggest traps in personal development and purpose-driven living is the belief that you must take everyone with you. You feel obligated to bring your friends, your family, even your past relationships into a future they were never prepared for. But destiny isn't a group assignment, it's a personal calling. And trying to force people into a journey they haven't been called to will not only slow you down, it can completely derail your mission. There are people who were assigned to your past, but are not assigned to your future. They may have been necessary in one chapter of your life, but that doesn't mean they were meant to continue into the next. Some relationships are seasonal. Some connections are situational. Trying to turn a temporary presence into a permanent placement creates friction, confusion, and emotional chaos. The elevation you're called to demands discernment about who can handle the altitude. Everyone doesn't have the vision to see where you're headed. And even if they do, not everyone has the character to walk with you there. Elevation exposes what's real. As you grow, you start to see people differently. Not out of pride, but out of clarity. You recognize who's supporting you versus who's secretly competing. You notice who's rooting for you versus who's tolerating you. You begin to distinguish genuine alignment from comfortable familiarity. When you hold on to relationships just because of history, you end up sacrificing your destiny. Loyalty is honorable, but when loyalty turns into limitation, it becomes dangerous. You weren't created to live in a cycle of repeating old patterns just to make others feel secure. You were created to expand, to evolve, to ascend. And that kind of growth often requires separation, not out of spite, but out of necessity. Some people will not understand the choices you make when you start prioritizing your calling. They'll call you distant, arrogant, or cold. But what they don't see is the cost of your purpose. They don't see the weight you carry, the battles you fight, or the depth of what you're building. When someone isn't called to your next level, they won't understand your preparation. They'll criticize your commitment because they're still comfortable in complacency. It's painful to release people you care about. It's not easy to outgrow relationships, but spiritual maturity means knowing when to shift. You can love someone deeply and still know they can't go with you. You can honor what they meant to your life without dragging them into a season they're not equipped for. Elevation isn't about rejection. It's about alignment. You're not pushing people away. You're stepping into who you were designed to be. The more you rise, the more selective you must become with your energy, your time, and your circle. You don't owe anyone unlimited access to your life just because they were there before. Legacy is built through intention, not obligation. Everyone clapping for you is not committed to you, and everyone connected to you is not committed to your calling. Discernment is your protection as you rise. There are divine doors that will not open until certain people are no longer walking with you. Their presence carries weights of distraction, old mindsets, and emotional clutter. Your breakthrough may be on the other side of one hard decision, the courage to walk forward without dragging familiar hands behind you. Sometimes the only thing holding you back is your unwillingness to walk alone for a while. Isolation is not always a curse. In many cases, it's preparation. It's in the quiet, the solitude, the pruning seasons that your character is refined, your vision sharpened, and your faith deepened. You become more focused, more aligned, and more aware of who you truly are when you're not constantly surrounded by people who pull you in directions that have nothing to do with your purpose. Eventually, your future will thank you for the people you released. Your progress will reflect the decisions you made in silence. And though it may hurt now, the peace that follows will confirm that you chose correctly. Everyone can't go where you're going, not because they're bad, but because they're not built for it. And where you're going requires people who don't just love you, but honor what's on your life. Your focus determines your future, because whatever has your attention will eventually shape your direction. The problem for most people isn't a lack of talent, opportunity, or even desire. It's a lack of concentrated attention. In a world full of distractions, demands, and constant noise, maintaining sharp focus is one of the rarest and most valuable disciplines. It's not just about avoiding bad habits. It's about protecting the mental space that allows purpose to grow and multiply. Focus is the bridge between intention and manifestation. You can have the most powerful goals, the most inspiring vision, and the most divine calling, but if your energy is divided, your results will be diluted. Every breakthrough you've ever prayed for is on the other side of your undivided attention. When your mind is scattered, so is your progress. When your focus is fractured, so is your momentum. Clarity is power, and focus is how clarity moves. Most people don't miss their calling because they didn't try. They miss it because they were trying too many things at once. Instead of building deeply, they build wide. Instead of mastering one thing, they dabble in many. And the danger in that is that they never gain the traction needed to see lasting transformation. Focus allows you to build with consistency, and consistency creates compound impact. You don't grow through random bursts of intensity. You grow through sustained, intentional focus. Focus also determines how you interpret distractions. When you lack focus, distractions look like opportunities. But when you are focused, opportunities that don't align with your purpose are clearly exposed as detours. Not every good thing is a God thing. Not every open door leads to your destiny. When you're focused, you stop being impressed by options and start being committed to your assignment. Your ability to focus is also deeply spiritual. The enemy of your soul doesn't have to destroy you. He just needs to distract you. He knows if he can keep your eyes on what's urgent instead of what's important, he can delay your progress indefinitely. That's why spiritual maturity isn't just about what you say yes to. It's also about what you say no to. The most anointed people often have the clearest boundaries because they understand the value of undistracted time with their purpose. A focused life is an intentional life. You start waking up with a reason. You begin investing your time with precision. You stop allowing people to waste your energy. You become selective with your conversations, careful with your commitments, and ruthless with your schedule. You don't entertain everything. You don't attend everything. You don't explain everything. Your life becomes structured around what matters most. Focus demands sacrifice. You will have to let go of some comforts. Say no to some invitations and distance yourself from the noise. People might not understand your silence, your absence, your shift, but they don't have to. You're not building for applause. You're building for impact. And that kind of building requires seasons of isolation, discipline, and fierce concentration on the vision God placed in your heart. There will be moments when your focus is tested, not by chaos, but by comfort. The temptation to settle is the greatest enemy of a focused life. When things start going well, when success starts showing up, it becomes easy to relax, to coast, to lose the urgency. But true focus isn't seasonal. It's sustained. It's what keeps you sharpening your skills, stretching your faith, and protecting your vision even when things seem stable. Focus also reveals what you truly value. You make time for what matters to you. Your calendar is a reflection of your priorities. Your environment is a mirror of your internal state. If your world feels cluttered, chances are your mind is cluttered. And that's why focus isn't just about discipline. It's about alignment. When your values, goals, and actions are in alignment, focus becomes natural. It stops feeling like pressure and starts feeling like peace. The future you desire is waiting for the version of you that can steward focus. It doesn't take years. It takes decisions. Daily decisions to stay in your lane, to keep your eyes on your own assignment, to stop comparing, to stop doubting, to stop looking back. The moment you choose focus, your future starts responding, your energy aligns, your actions sharpen, and your life begins moving in the direction of everything you were born to become.